right, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for setting time apart and joining us right here at Kirk Mid Morning. My name is 6th Sept, and I'll be with you for the next few hours. I hope you are doing well today. It is the 6th day of September, a day after Kenyans are now aware of the next president after yesterday's Supreme Court verdict at around noontime. Indeed, it has been quite hell of an experience with Kenyans who, of course, are followers of the UDA party, as well as the president-elect, celebrating their decision and victory of Deputy-elect President William Ruto in court yesterday, with, of course, President Kenyatta speaking and addressing the nation. Some of the things we'll be looking at in our news by segments right about now. Welcome to today's program, Kirk Mid Morning, right here. Do interact with us on our socials, Kirk TV Kenya on Facebook and YouTube. Let us know indeed where it is you are watching us from, as well as how do you perceive yesterday's decision by the Supreme Court. How are things like in your area? People in a celebratory mood, or really are they moving on with life? Would like to hear from you. Do interact with us. Kirk TV Kenya on Facebook and YouTube, Kirk TV _Kenya on Twitter, and at Faith Kaulu. Hashtag Kirk Mid Morning. Let us know your thoughts on yesterday's verdict. We'll be looking at that in a few with my guest, who I'll be introducing in a few as well. But right about now, let's have a look at the News Bite segment. We start with the Supreme Court yesterday upheld Ruto's victory that was declared by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, on August 15th. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme 7 judges, including the Chief Justice Martha Koome, threw away all 9 matters that were determined in the petition filed by Raila Odinga and others. Chief Justice Martha Koome, while reading the unanimous ruling, cited that the petitioner did not present substantive evidence.
The decision of the court, and we make the following orders. 1. The presidential election petition number E005 of 2022 as consolidated with the presidential election petition numbers E001, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8 of 2022 are hereby dismissed. As a consequence, we declare the election of the first respondent as president-elect to be varied under Article 143.
Indeed, Ruto's win upheld yesterday in court by the 7-judge bench. Moving on, President-elect William Ruto lauded the Supreme Court ruling that upheld his election as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya. In a significant address after the ruling, Ruto categorically summarized the ruling as one that proved the independence of the judiciary. In his first official address as President-elect, Ruto vowed to work with those in the opposition.
Because of God, we are here today to celebrate that today the people of Kenya have made a choice, and that choice has been confirmed by our judiciary. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 has done a lot to create comfort in institutions and the rule of law, and we continue to make encouraging progress on the path towards becoming a higher trust society, standing fully on its constitution. It was therefore perfectly legitimate for the petitioners to go before the Supreme Court to have their questions answered, doubts assuaged, and fears allayed. By exercising their constitutional right to take advantage of opportunities to establish the truth, the petitioners tested the result and inscribed upon it the highest stamp of judicial, legal, and constitutional approval. I do not take this for granted, and I thank the judiciary in general and the Supreme Court in particular for staying strong as the shining beacon of constitutionalism and the rule of law, even in the most daunting of circumstances. And you know what I mean. The Supreme Court scrutinized, examined, and dissected and tested the declaration of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission against the high standard established by the Constitution. The decision vindicated the Commission's effort to go all the way and deliver an election that exceeded public expectation and fully met the constitutional threshold of a secure, transparent, free, fair, and accountable election. The return of a unanimous decision on all the 9 issues confirms the fidelity of the IEBC to both the law and the Constitution. I therefore commend the Commission for their noble achievement at tremendous and regrettable cost to serve the people of Kenya by ensuring that their sovereign will.
First official address of President-elect William Ruto after yesterday's court victory. Few moments before his official address, speaking was Deputy President-elect Rigathi Gachagua. Let's listen in.
Let me take this opportunity, Your Excellency, if you may allow me, give a word of assurance to the public service. We are aware that your morale is low. We are aware you feel demeaned. We are aware you have become non-productive because of what you have been taken through. I want to assure you on behalf of my boss that our first job is to restore the dignity of the public service. Our first job is to cushion civil servants from harassment by officers in the police force under the guise of fighting corruption. Our work is to protect the civil servants from extortion. Our work is to make sure that we get a working public service to assist us in the management of the affairs of this country. And I want to urge all our colleagues in this struggle, those who have been persecuted, those who have wounds, please, let this victory heal all our wounds. And let us get to work. We have work to do. We are inheriting a dilapidated country with a 10 trillion public debt. We are inheriting a country with 6 million young people who have no jobs. We are inheriting a country with 14 million Kenyans in CRB. We have work to do. And let nobody cheat you that it is easy. We have to work from day one. So let bygones be bygones, and let all those who are against us, we invite them to join us. We build this country together.
Presidential winning team giving the official first public address. Of course, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Deputy President-elect Rigathi Gachagua, and President-elect William Ruto speaking yesterday after the court win. Moving on, President Uhuru Kenyatta has assured that he will oversee a smooth transition of leadership to the newly President-elect William Ruto. In his perhaps last address to the nation as president, Uhuru shied off congratulating the win of William Ruto, but instead lauded the country for a peaceful electioneering period. Yesterday, or rather on Tuesday next week, President Uhuru is expected to hand over tools of power in the swearing-in ceremony of President-elect William Ruto.
The Supreme Court made a ruling on the presidential dispute, upholding the results announced by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission on the 15th of August, 2022. And in keeping to the pledge that I made to uphold the rule of law when I took the oath of office, I commit to executing the orders of this court to the letter. The process of handing over is in progress through the Assumption of Office Committee, which actually has already begun its work as of August 10th, 2022. And indeed, it is my intention to oversee a smooth transition to the next administration, and all the necessary orders to facilitate this process have already been issued. And because democracy is a work in progress, I urge the country to respect the institutions that midwife our new leaders. And in doing so, I also urge citizens to constantly put them under scrutiny, for this is the civic duty of every single Kenyan.
Well, looking at, of course, first public address of President-elect William Ruto, now Ruto yesterday dismissed a handshake with the opposition, saying that he will ensure that the law is followed in delivering for the Kenyan people. In his statement, Ruto said his government will follow the law to the letter.
As I committed to the people of Kenya, I believe in the rule of law. I do not believe in the handshake stories. I believe in an accountable government held to account by a responsible opposition. That is how Kenya is going to move forward. And so I look forward to a conversation on how they will hold us to account and make sure that we deliver on the commitments that we have made to the people of Kenya, and public resources are put to good use in an accountable manner, and so that we can reap the benefits of what the people of Kenya have done in electing.
Right, that's all we had for you on the News Bite segment. Of course, our discussion today is based on the Supreme verdict. We'll also have a look at the transition of the government. My guest today, who will be joining me in a few, is Levi Munyeri, an advocate of the High Court as well as a political commentator. A conversation you definitely want to tune into. Do let us know where you're watching us from, your reactions, your comments as well on our socials. Facebook and YouTube is Kirk TV Kenya. Twitter is Kirk TV _Kenya, as well as at Faith Kaulu. Hashtag is Kirk Mid Morning. Stay right here. We'll be back in a few.
Are you looking to grow your business? Kirk TV offers you a variety of advertising opportunities to suit your budget. Advertise with us today and reach your potential customers countrywide. For more information, email us on sales@kirktv.org or call 011 00 90 647.
When the Bible wants to say something has come to an end, they will say they waited for 40 years, for 40 days. 40 is an end of a season.
40, if you read the Old Testament, and it even overflows into the New Testament, is fullness.
You know, something continuous, not just because it's 40 years.
To me, is the victory of the church, that the church was able to embrace women.
And so we also celebrate the many men, the many leaders, our church fathers, who actually sat down and said it is time.
It's a moment of rejoicing over the joys and pains that I've gone through.
And I told God I would want to be a minister like this one.
The ones that cleared the thicket in the forest for us
because of the sacrifices they made, the battles they fought, you know, their great commitment.
In all humility, there are those who have been called home. They have paved the way for us.
To be with the Lord home, Jesus is still with you.
No Jesu areho rugendo ni rwega tutwa ranete hegi keno.
Choose life that you may love the Lord your God.
If you delight yourself in the Lord, He will make you fruitful in whatever season you are in.
Listen to His voice and hold fast to Him.
That as disciples ourselves, we're being invited to be transformed more fully every single day.
In our walk with God, let us know that we are assured victory in every battle.
For the Lord is your life.
Live a pure life. Are you living a righteous life before the Lord? It is possible. People are wondering, can you do without corruption? Yes, I can stand and say it is possible to do without corruption.
Don't miss season 2 of the evening epilogue every day at 9:30 p.m. only on Kirk TV.
So catch Fit to Live every Monday through Friday at 6:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Together, let's have fun, get fit, and stay healthy. My name is Aida Munzati. I'll be your host for this show. Remember, your health always matters.
The great people on earth today are the people who pray. Not those who talk about prayer or those who explain about prayer, but those who take time and pray.
God answers prayers. Why? Because He hears. His ear is not deaf, so He hears our prayers.
Men and women who go before God, we should be men and women of godly standards.
Sure.
So we abide.
Yeah.
So that we keep tapping from the source.
But as we pray, it is important to tell God that your will be done in this prayer that I'm praying, or about this prayer item that I'm praying about. Not as I will, yes, this is my will, but let your will be done.
In these changing times and seasons of uncertainty, whom do you look up to?
God keeps His part. Calm rain, calm sunshine. God is still committed.
From one generation to another, and it's not like shifting shadows that He will change. But
join Reverend Elizabeth Kimani and Henry Kyra every Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. live on Kirk TV for Call Unto Me.
2021, He's still the same God and He has not changed.
Are you looking to grow your business? Kirk TV offers you a variety of advertising opportunities to suit your budget. Advertise with us today and reach your potential customers countrywide. For more information, email us on sales@kirktv.org or call 011 00 90 647.
All right, welcome back and thank you so much for keeping it tuned right here. Joining me right now is Levi Munyeri, an advocate of the High Court as well as a political commentator. Thank you so much for finding time and joining us today for this conversation. Karibu.
Thank you so much, Faith. I'm glad to join you.
Right. And indeed, today we're talking about the transition of government as well as yesterday's Supreme verdict. So do interact with us in case of any comments or question. Leave them on our social media pages. That is Kirk TV Kenya on Facebook and YouTube. Twitter is KirkTV_Kenya and Art Faith Kaulu. We'll be looking at them. Remember, our SMS line, if you prefer that, is 0111 220044. That is 0111 220044, and we'll be looking at them as we continue with our discussion today. But right about now, let's start with a very interesting matter. When the petitions are filed, of course, the judges, the 7 judges, can I say consolidated them into 7 or rather 9 issues to be looked into when determining the verdict. And as of yesterday, we see that probably Raila Odinga, Martha Karua and others lost on all the 9 issues that had been set out. What does this mean really? What does this indicate?
Faith, in essence, it means that the petition that was before the court was very weak. Because initially, I think there were more than 30 and something issues. The court, of course, as it ordinarily does, condensed them into 9 issues. And in such a case, you always expect a petitioner to win on 1 or 2 issues. But to lose on all the 9 issues flat means the petition was weak in terms of evidence. It was not well thought out. And it could not actually should have been presented before the court in such instances, considering the lawyers who are there. They could have advised the client that there is no need to go to court with insufficient evidence, which is the truth. I read the petition myself. It was a good petition, but when it came to the point of now arguing it out and presenting evidence, it was underwhelming.
Okay, let's listen in to Chief Justice Martha Koome, of course, giving out the ruling. Then we'll come back to a discussion. Let's listen in.
The decision of the court, and we make the following orders. 1, the presidential election petition number E005 of 2022 as consolidated with the presidential election petition numbers E001, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8 of 2022 are hereby dismissed. As a consequence, we declare the election of the first respondent as president-elect to be valid under Article 143 of the Constitution.
Yesterday's ruling by Martha Koome, of course, it was a unanimous decision. We'll be looking at that because that's a term that has, disturbed a lot of Kenyans. But going back to you speaking about the 9 issues, you've mentioned that it was a nice petition, but when it came to the presentation in court, it was underwhelming. So then could we say it was the lawyers who failed to address the issues or convince the 7 judges?
Ordinarily, what happens is that a lawyer, you're instructed by a client. This means that a client brings facts and evidence before you. You advise on what evidence is relevant. Then you take the case to court, of course, after drafting what we call pleadings. In this case, is the petition itself. So when you're in court, then it's the duty and function of a lawyer to argue the issues. and that means you now present what your client has given you to court, and your core duty actually is now to marry the facts with the evidence and the law. So your major role is now to introduce the law to match the evidence and the facts that you've been given you. So at an instance, I'll not blame the lawyers. I'll blame the petitioners themselves. They are now experienced petitioners. Raila Odinga is now an experienced election petitioner. I'll actually call him a seasoned litigant. He has done that twice. He could have collected more evidence. He had a chance. One of the failures of the Azimio coalition, as we now learn, is the absence of agents in the polling station during the election. An agent is very important when it comes to collection of evidence in an election, scenario. So what it means is that the petitioner did not have enough evidence to present to its lawyers. Where the lawyers might have let down the petitioner is perhaps to advise him properly or them properly, that you are coming to court, this is what evidence you need to bring forth. Because a good lawyer, like myself, what I do, I'm not bragging to be a good lawyer, but I think I am. When a client comes before me, I can advise the client very fast, after listening to him or her for 1 hour, that you don't have enough evidence to go to court. After that advice, is up to him or her to tell me, well, you still should go or you should not, but at least you've advised the client that the evidence that you are going to present to court might not be sufficient. But there's another interesting twist that happened yesterday. The judges actually castigated the petitioner and their lawyers for forgery and bringing false evidence before the court. It's a very serious thing, because what it means is that the client and the advocates might have conspired, if we go by what the Supreme Court has said, to fabricate evidence to strengthen their case further, which borders criminality under the Penal Code.
Speaking about that, because you've raised that issue, of course, and you mentioned it's a criminal offense, what then does this do to the image of the said lawyer? And then, of course, are there necessary actions that need to be taken for the criminal offense?
It is not a good thing at all. It taints your reputation. However, a lawyer will always have a defense in normal circumstances and say these documents were brought by the client if they are forgeries. But yesterday there was an interesting case of an affidavit sworn by one advocate called Arnold Oginga, which the court actually pinpointed to. The argument of the court, or rather the decision of the court, is that that affidavit is full of falsehood and has forged attachments. So it is now pinpointing an advocate, because what happens is that an advocate does not swear an affidavit on behalf of a client. But my colleague Arnold Oginga, in his wisdom or lack of, decided to swear an affidavit stating that he went to several polling stations and received some Form 34s. It's interesting because that's not the work of an advocate ordinarily. So he decided to take the responsibility of a client who should be an Azimio person, and purported that he went and collected evidence himself. And that affidavit was considered to contain forged documents. So that is a serious issue, because in the Penal Code of Kenya there's an offense called perjury. Perjury is where you lie under oath, whether in the form of an affidavit or in the form of a sworn testimony in court. So the court, luckily for him, fell short of recommending criminal prosecution. I'll begin to see the final judgment of the court in 21 days, because if they recommend criminal prosecution, that means the DCI and the DPP can take over the matter. It's quite unfortunate.
Okay, so it is indeed a serious issue.
Yes.
And many have lauded the 7 judges, of course, for a very bold step and what they term as an independent decision. Speaking about that, having to point at that in public and very boldly, what do you make of the 7 judges?
I listened carefully yesterday and later on read the 36th summary of the judgment, and I must say it is quite impressive. In terms of legal reasoning, it makes sense. Advocates who are also very keen to follow the matter, you could see some serious evidential gaps in the case of the petitioners.
Okay.
So it was quite expected when it came to evidence. I'd laud the judgment as a sober one. It is well reasoned, it is founded on law, and the fact that it was unanimous is also very speaking, because it means not a single judge could actually find fault in what the majority have said, and in the fact that the petition was not fully supported by evidence. Another thing that would ordinarily play out in the public, we being Kenyans, is the issue of tribal and partisan affiliation.
Right.
So the fact that the judges did a unanimous decision, because you could hear some talk that I saw on social media, one saying one of the lawyers presented Martha Koome, or Martha Koome presented one of the lawyers. This judge is a wife to this advocate. So they painted a very good picture and denied Kenyans the chance to speculate about their partisan affiliations by presenting a unanimous decision.
Right.
It shows that the court is united in reasoning and can actually take one direction when it comes to legal questions, despite their partisan or perceived partisan affiliations.
Okay. You've spoken about the matter of the petition, of course, having holes and lacking enough evidence. And immediately after the verdict, we saw the Azimio coalition team led by Senior Counsel James Orengo terming the verdict as incredible. We'll be looking at that, but let's listen into what they had to say immediately after the verdict.
With the decision of the Supreme Court, like Al Gore, I will say we accept the decision, but we do not agree with it. And I am saying this as a seasoned practitioner that courts sometimes make mistakes.
More than several of those cases, we had overwhelming evidence. As my senior counsel, Mr. Orengo, says, the servers were not opened. The involvement of the Venezuelans for a full month before, half a month before the elections and up to the 16th of August was not explained. No, it wasn't even offered. We perhaps are a little distressed on the over-reliance of a registrar's report that has no input.
Experienced senior counsels, of course, heading the Azimio team. We see James Orengo, Philip Murgo right there, saying that they had enough evidence. Talk about that, because the court just dismissed that, claiming that the petitioners lacked enough evidence to convince the judges. If you followed the hearing, what can you say about the evidence? Was it sufficient?
Interesting again, because the court did not mince its words. In normal circumstances, the court would not use strong words like hot air, strong words like a wild goose chase.
Indeed.
It shows that the court was also totally displeased with some of the conduct of either the petitioner or the advocates. And in this case, it was the purported forgery and perjury in the evidence of the petitioner. So that made the court actually go way ahead of what ordinarily does by alleging and using very strong words against the case of the petitioner. On the issue of the lawyers, it's not out of the ordinary for an advocate to say he agrees or he respects the decision but disagrees with its reasoning. And the question is, if you agree with the reasoning, then what do you explain to your client? You are the one who perhaps advised your client that you have a very strong case. So when you lose in a court of law, the only thing, of course, you are obliged as an advocate and an officer of the court to agree with the decision of the court.
Right.
But definitely not to agree, to respect the decision of the court. But definitely if you are in the losing end, you'll disagree with its reasoning by virtue that you have to explain and be accountable to your client on what happened to court.
Let's look at the fact that Senior Counsel James Orengo says they respect but do not agree with that. Of course, saying that sometimes the court does make mistake, let's rely heavily on that statement where he says, or rather insinuates, that it's probably they could have made a mistake, of course saying that he awaits the full judgment to be out to have a keen look at it. What does that mean? What does that signify?
Despite being this, the entire process is a legal process of court, there's also a political aspect to it. And James Orengo, despite being a seasoned attorney, is also a seasoned politician. And at the end of the day, he also needs to play to the gallery. So it is more of a political statement, so that when the matter is out there, you can still come back and say, well, this election was not free and fair. One important aspect of his statement is, of course, the issue of the full judgment. It's only in a full judgment where you can find the reasoning of the court. Well, in legal terms, we call it stare decisis. So what is saying that let's wait for the full judgment of the court so that we analyze it well as lawyers. I remember in 2013 there was a correction that was later published in the newspaper of the judgment, where the court later on in hindsight realized there might be an error we made somewhere and corrected. So it is also common for some judgments to contain legal errors, where you find judges in either haste or simply overlooking an issue ended up making a slight legal error, but generally does not change the outcome of the case.
All right.
So I don't read anything legal in the statement beyond some political gimmicks.
Okay, we've seen, and you mentioned that the court did not mince its words, of course saying hot air, a wild goose chase, and the Azimio legal team complained of the use of such harsh words to define, of course, what they defended or represented. Do you think indeed they were harsh words, or it was necessary?
They were harsh words, definitely. As I said, a court should also be quite mild in its judgment, or ordinarily is quite mild while writing a judgment, because what it means, it's also a castigation of the advocates. And I think that's what they found quite offensive. But in this case, the court had a reason to do that. The reason they clearly stated also, that the court believed the advocates in the matter, one of them at least, might have lied under oath in the form of an affidavit.
Right.
There were forged documents that were presented before court. Such issues actually are sufficient for a court to behave that way. So they gave a reason why they used harsh words. They're indeed harsh words. Because I remember a reference to a counsel, a senior called Julie Soweto, where the court actually termed her sensational presentation of a Form 34A with the name of now the famous Yose at the back as a wild goose chase. So it is also a question of the competence of the advocate. As an advocate, when the court uses such words, you perceive them as a direct attack to you. And sometimes it doesn't augur well. But in this case, and in what the court said in terms of forgeries and false statements, they were justified to use such words. Of course, it's also poetry. A judgment is a publication.
Indeed.
And the court will want to decorate it with one or two words and make it sensational in its own way.
Yeah.
So that should not escape our minds.
Okay. Now, of course, you've spoken very well as an advocate. Now, as a political commentator, would you say then the use of harsh words was the court being biased? Because we've also seen that come out clearly, others insinuating that, oh, the court is being biased where they're using harsh words towards the Azimio's legal team.
Not really. What I find consequential in the use of harsh words is the political dimension of it, because I had actually the IBC chair, Wafula Chebukati, and also the president-elect William Ruto using the words "we've been totally vindicated."
Yeah.
So it has serious political consequences, because what it means is that the court has said there is literally no case. There is no case before court. So when someone like the president-elect William Ruto now gets to his political gallery, he'll actually mock that case and tell the people that the case that was presented there was totally flat. I was duly elected. The Supreme Court confirmed that and confirmed that resoundingly.
All right. Let's go back to the case. Of course, looking at the 9 issues that were there, we could easily say Azimio lost on all of them, which for me, I believe it's a very big blow. Looking back at the case and how they presented it, what can we say are some of the blunders or mistakes that they made that led to them losing this landmark case?
Several. One that I've pointed out quite clearly is evidence. They did not have evidence to bring to court. The second one is the way they drafted their petition. I read it and I found fault, specifically the one for Raila Odinga. They'd cast their net too wide. When you go to a court, there are things we call prayers. After you argue your case, at the end of it you make prayers. What do you want the court to assist you with? So sometimes as an advocate, it's always very prudent to categorically have a direction and focus on that. But for one reason or another, the Azimio team and the Azimio petition will cast their net too wide in terms of prayers, because they were seeking, one of the prayers they were seeking was the nullification of election. In the same petition, they are seeking the prayers that actually the IBC be dissolved.
Yes.
And criminal prosecution be recommended against the chair. The chair be declared unfit to hold public office. At the same time, they are seeking a rerun. At the same time, they are seeking that Raila be declared president.
Yes.
So these prayers are allowed in a petition, but when they become contradictory, because there are constitutional provisions, an election or a fresh election needs to be held within 2 months after their nullification. The process of appointing commissioners of IBC is a very elaborate process in the Constitution. So if you dissolve IBC and the elections are annulled, then what happens? Who will hold another election? So the outcome would be a serious constitutional crisis that the court is always very alert not to issue judgments that can lead to such crises about constitutions. So that's what happened. They cast their net too wide in their wisdom or lack of it, and it ended up in a very disastrous way.
Looking at, of course, the commission, the Electoral Commission, IEBC, of course, we saw the chairperson speaking yesterday, flanked by the 2 commissioners who are on his side and the CEO. Of course, the 4 dissenting commissioners were not present. Of course, we can term this as a win for IEBC as a commission because it was not disbanded. But then looking in future elections that are yet to come, what then does this mean for the commission? Because of course, during the hearing, several questions were raised. Does the chair hold veto power? Why didn't the other commissioners who say they were given other duties speak at the present time? Why did they wait till the tail end to raise these issues? What does this mean for the commission in future elections?
Beyond President-elect William Ruto, the commissioner was the biggest winner yesterday.
Right.
You could follow the petitioner's case and you could hear very strong words and castigation against the chair, Wafula Chebukati. It is a very embarrassing situation for a public officer, to be termed as a criminal, a serial criminal, someone who should be prosecuted, someone who should not hold any public office. So yesterday, actually, as he addressed the media, I could see the relief.
Right.
Because as he said, he has been vindicated of criminal offenses. So the IBC and the chair specifically substantially won. However, I was very keen to note one loss that he suffered of very little consequence now, but in the future he'll have to act accordingly. The court held that the chair does not have veto powers and does not have the sole mandate to tally results. You remember that argument ensued during the hearing. So the court clearly held that the Constitution vests the power to tally election results on IBC. And in IBC means the commissioners, the staff,
the secretary,
and the entire, the entire body.
Right.
So that was a loss for the commissioner, and in the next election he'll have to be more consultative and to appreciate that the Supreme Court held that it's not him, it is the commission. So the court also noted that there'll be an array of recommendations that would come in the final judgment, the elaborate judgment on how IBC should operate. So that would be the yardstick for IBC operation and preparation for the next election.
All right.
So let's wait and see.
Let's wait and see. And before we move on from the Chebukati's point, I think let's listen in, if we're ready, to the IBC's chair, Wafula Chebukati, speaking yesterday, immediately, or rather a few hours later after the verdict. All right, I think as we wait for that, let's look at the 4 dissenting commissioners who were not present yesterday when the chair was speaking. As a political commentator, of course, how does this look for them? You know, seeing that, of course, it was a big win, as we can term it, for Wafula Chebukati, the chairperson. Is it an embarrassment? Should they resign? Because that question came up.
The court again did not mince its words in describing the 4 commissioners. It fell short of stating that they're the ones who are opaque, not Chebukati. So the term of opaque for will actually be their name and identity for some time to come. It's very embarrassing, of course, because what the court said or fell short of saying is that they might be the ones who are at fault. They did not oppose the tallying process until the tail end. However, the court also noted that these are boardroom issues, which was a very mild term. I remember at the beginning of it, when there was an issue of representation of IBC, the court distanced itself from IBC activities and said it's not its mandate to command how IBC should solve their problems. So the court opened a room for them to reconcile, which should be the right thing to do, because the process of appointing commissioners is very elaborate. So not all is lost. It is a boardroom eruption, as the court described it, which happens in many boardrooms, different institutions. We are familiar with it in Kenya.
Indeed.
So let them swallow their pride and distance themselves from their political masters. Sit together. I could see the chairman also extended an olive branch, sit together and resolve their problems. All right. With that said, let's take a very short break. We'll be back in a few, but do keep interacting with us on our socials, Kirk TV Kenya on Facebook and YouTube. Twitter is Kirk TV_Kenya and at Faith Kaulu. We'll be back in a few. Keep it right here.
We welcome your feedback on our programming. For questions or comments, kindly get in touch with us via email info@kirktv.org, SMS 0111 220044, or call us on 0794 588 054.
Not a mistake. Welcome to Kirk Watoto. We're very glad to have you. In this show, we have 4 segments.
I always get excited for this particular moment when we raise generations for Christ.
You know that Jesus loves you so much, and he has given you talents.
The aim of this program is to make sure that it nurtures your talent.
By then, kuwa na baraka si pesa mingi, ni kuwa na Yesu ndani ya moyo wako na kujipenda na kujua ya kwamba you are not a mistake.
Wow! Let's do this.
Christine Kemunto. I'm taking a bachelor's in business information technology. I chose ZTech because, first of all, ZTech has been ranked among the best in ICT, and I thought it will be best. It will be best for my course. First of all, there are so many ICT labs in ZTech University, which enables students, mostly those who are pursuing IT courses, to get to know more about their courses, of which the labs have so many computers which have Ethernet, which is easier for them to browse. If I were given a chance to choose another university, I'll definitely choose ZTech University.
Apply today. ZTech University. Invent your future.
The great people on earth today are the people who pray. Not those who talk about prayer or those who explain about prayer, but those who take time and pray.
God answers prayers. Why? Because He hears. His ear is not deaf, so He hears our prayers.
Men and women who go before God, we should be men and women of godly standards. Sure. So we abide. So that we keep tapping from the source.
But as we pray, it is important to tell God that your will be done in this prayer that I'm praying, or about this prayer item that I'm praying about. Not as I will, yes, this is my will, but let your will be done.
In these changing times and seasons of uncertainty, whom do you look up to?
God keeps His part. Calm rain, calm sunshine. God is still committed.
From one generation to another, and it's not like shifting shadows that He will change. But
join Reverend Elizabeth Kimani and Henry Kyra every Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. live on Kirk TV for Call Unto Me.
2021, He's still the same God, and He has not changed.
So catch Fit to Live every Monday through Friday at 6:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Together, let's have fun, get fit, and stay healthy. My name is Aida Munzatsi. I'll be your host for this show. Remember, your health always matters.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for keeping it right here today on Kirk Mid Morning as we talk about, yesterday's verdict and look forward to the transition of government. With me today is Levi Munyeri, who's an advocate as well as a political commentator. Just before the break, we were talking about, of course, the commission and the division that is there. Before we continue with that discussion, let's listen in to IEBC's Chair Fula Chebukati speaking yesterday.
The Commission put in place a robust and transparent election infrastructure to ensure that the votes cast were counted, electronically transmitted, verified, tallied, announced and declared in line with Articles 81 and 86 of the Constitution. This process started immediately after 2017 general election, and the Commission tested its systems and processes in over the 40 by-elections in the last 5 years. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is finally vindicated. The Commission put in place a
Wafula
robust
Chebukati
and
speaking yesterday,
transparent...
of course, he mentioned several things, including the profiling of the IEBC's workers, him being vindicated, as well as other issues arising in the Commission. Let's talk about the disunity in the Commission, with 4 commissioners rejecting the presidential results before the petitions were filed, of course, and during the hearing as well. We had several advocates who mentioned that that is a really strong point. But looking at the verdict yesterday, things turned out different. You know, we expected that point, or rather it relied heavily from advice we received from several advocates. And Kenyans as well were excited because we saw it publicly. They came out public to give addresses at Serena while the chairperson was at the Bomas of Kenya. Why didn't things play out as we expected, or rather, why did they play out as they did?
On that issue for determination, I remember very well the court started by castigating the IBC, and I was sitting with one Azimio supporter. At the beginning, it looked like that is the golden bullet, which now we ordinarily say a court would read a judgment, reach somewhere and say, however. So they started in a very petitioner-friendly way by castigating the IBC, but posed a rhetoric question towards the end. Should we nullify an election because of a boardroom rupture?
Right.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, Kenyans would go to the ballot, an election will be prepared for 5 years. Then at the very tail end, hours before results are announced, if one commissioner gets mad or it's bribed or gets confused and decides to cause fracas in the boardroom, then the entire 5-year process is nullified because of that. It doesn't make sense. That was a very clear and wise decision by the court, logically thought, that an election being a process that encompasses so many things, so many preparations and billions of shillings, should never be held sabotaged by one person.
Okay, I think I really like how you put it. Things never always turn out as you expect them or as we see they will turn out to be, and that's a fact I think we have to agree to and move on as a nation. Let's listen in as well to a clip of what DCJ Philomena Mwilu spoke about yesterday, stating that 6 million Kenyans thereabout will not be happy by the verdict, but indeed the nation still has to move on. All right, we'll be having a look at it in a few, but before that is ready, let's talk about the petitions that were filed. Of course, we see comments like petitions filed. Of course, even though they lack substantial evidence, these are just political players who cannot accept defeat rather. So a lot of advocates saying that the problem was not IEBC and how they conducted the election, but from political players who do not want to accept defeat. Something that was said, of course, after the court thrashed out all the 9 issues. What's your take on this?
Lest I forget, Faith, I must mention that Raila is a hero. He is a hero of electoral justice. He filed now what we call the Raila 1 in 2013, and it had consequences that actually echoed throughout the world. Many universities across the world took that petition verdict, the judgment read it, interpreted it. 5 years later, we came to Raila 2, which he was vindicated because the court nullified the election. 5 years again, we are now on Raila 3.
Right.
These 3 cases are perhaps the most consequential election petition judgments in the whole world. That the Kenyan court has found a chance to place itself on the map in terms of interpreting electoral laws and presenting what should result into a nullification of an election. So that is a great thing that has happened to this country. As you noted, the court indicated that there will be further recommendations. So because of these 3 petitions, we are actually perfecting our electoral process, which is a very good thing. So it is a win to the Constitution. It doesn't matter who won or who lost, Raila, Ruto. For me, it is a win to the Constitution. It's a win to electoral justice, that in 2017 we are likely to have a more perfect election than we had in 2013, 2017, and 2022.
Right. Okay, I think we're now ready for Philomena Mulu. Let's listen in. Then we'll come back and, of course, talk about other court matters.
And even if we say there are no winners, and even if we say that the winners are the Constitution and the people of Kenya, the truth is that some 6 million Kenyans will not be happy today. But that's the nature of the work we do.
All right, I think very bold, very clear right there, Philomena Mwilu, of course, speaking. Indeed, he mentioned, of course, as well as the time that is allocated to the court to come up with a verdict, saying that if you're not happy, it's because of the time that is there, the time limit that is there. And looking at this, speaking about the time limit, is that something that should be looked into again, or should we still maintain the 14 days?
The architects of the Constitution of 2010 were very helpful in this. And they had a very good historical background, that if a president is sworn in and assumes powers, and then a court comes and makes a decision, nullifying his win, then it can cause a serious political problem. What happens if the president refuses to relinquish power back to other state organs? So in their wisdom, then this case must be hurriedly done with, so that as we go to the swearing in of the president, the matter is settled. Unlike governors, now we are doing governors' petitions and MPs. Governors are already sworn in. But because the stakes are not so high at gubernatorial level, you can easily, remove a governor from power vis-a-vis a president who controls all the state machinery. So it is an inconvenience, but in my view, it should stick. They have an option which they have enforced of giving a summary of the judgment and then writing the entire judgment later. That's something they can pursue. But the issue of 7 days, it should not be very long before swearing in, because it will create a power lacuna. It's tough, it's an inconvenience, but it's something that is doable. They have done it 3 times and they can continue to do it. There is no need to invoke a constitutional amendment because of the issue. Wacha wapambane
na hali yao.
Kabisa.
Before we start talking about transition matters, let's look at, of course, the trending word unanimous decision yesterday by the 7 judges. Talk about that, a unanimous decision. This means all 7 judges agreed to this, or could it be some disagreed, but they tried to, can I say, out here we say kuficha white, like they tried to portray unity.
I have mixed feelings about a unanimous decision, as you've clearly pointed out. One of the issues is that in a matter, it's very unlikely that 7 people would agree in a matter of law. The law generally is argumentative in nature, and 2 or 3 lawyers would not agree on any issue of the law. So it points to one thing which we've already discussed, that the petition might as well have just been too weak, that it could not pass any legal test, which is something I suspect and believe so. So no judge, because it does not even go to the merits of the case, it goes to the questions of evidence. You could hear words like inadmissible evidence, forgeries. No judge can, it's a point of law, no judge can take in forged evidence. So such issues could have created a consensus among the 7. However, if the court was to decide this case on issues of merit of the case, that what is the test for nullifying elections, then you'd expect dissenting opinions from some judges. So I believe it's a matter of the petition itself, its form and nature that resulted to the decision. But it's always good for jurisprudence for the court to disagree. Because what happens is that what is dissenting opinion later on can still be used by other advocates in later cases. Like in 2027, you can quote, or in 2022, you can quote a dissenting opinion of Njoki Ndung'u in 2017. So in terms of development of the law, we always do not mind a dissenting opinion, because it shows that different judges had different views on issues. It's not a question of, it's not a bad thing for judges to disagree. It happens all over the world. However, the judges in Kenya must always also be sensitive to the prevailing political, ethnic, social environment. Because in a nation like the US, if you check the US Supreme Court, 9 judges, they are divided into liberals and conservatives. So you'll always find an ideological difference, 4-3 in terms of ideological alienation or inclination. That is expected. But in the Kenyan setting, it always takes a tribal, partisan perspective, which does not point the court in good light. Because I believe if someone like a judge, in that instance, like Ouko, if he agreed and allowed the petition, in a political perspective, outside you'll hear some people saying it's because he comes from this community, which is similar to that of the petitioner. So the court becomes alive to those issues. And in 2017, one of the issues that was actually ugly when the judgment was being read, you could hear very strong words from the court, specific judges, not pointing towards the advocates and the petitioners in this case, but rather pointing towards each other. Very harsh words against a fellow judge. I remember in some instance I could actually see former Chief Justice Maraga, bending his head, because as a dissenting opinion was being read, you could feel some strong words being used against the judges who were the majority. So such issues now embarrass the court. If there is a separation in terms of judgment and issues, it should be purely ideological and legal. When it becomes personal, it does nothing but diminish the stature of the court. So in the Kenyan context, one is because the petitioner's case might be very weak and resulted into a unanimous decision. The second one is that the court must have also been alive to the prevailing political temperatures and our societal thinking. And it came out very strongly. It's now a very stronger court than it were before. What stands out is that people have bigger faith in that court from both sides. You could see both lawyers thanking them. And unintendedly, it puts the president-elect in a very precarious position. It will be unlikely or distasteful if during the tenure of his presidency he comes out to condemn that court. Because people will ask him, when it was granting you a win, you praised it and called them the hero of the election. Now when they are making a decision that does not favor you, you want to vilify them. So he has been boxed to respect the judiciary, which I hope he will.
All right. I think that is very well put. Thank you for that. Let's talk about the boldness of the court yesterday. Kenyans have lauded the 7 judges, of course, for being independent and biased, open, and very, can I say, eloquent in terms of reading out the verdict, expressing very well what they intend to pass out to Kenyans, of course, and to several people who were targeted in the message yesterday. Speaking about this, looking at the harsh words used, what can you say this then lays what foundation for future petitions to come? Because when we look at the hearing, of course, one of the lawyers representing the respondents said, how can we have more than 8 petitions filed against one individual? This means in future we will have even more than 200 petitions. But looking at yesterday's verdict, what precedents does this set for future petitions?
A very good precedent. One, the court was very categorical on who should come before it after an election. What it was saying, in other words, is that if you don't have evidence, don't come near us, because we'll not assist you. The trend that has been now emerging is that of fishing expedition. When you're organizing as a candidate in an election, you feel like you have two chances. First is to campaign and a vote is cast. If it does not come to your favor, you imagine that you have another chance to bite the cherry, to go to the Supreme Court and beg it to nullify election.
Right.
I saw a very interesting headline by the New York Times 2 days before election, saying that in Kenya, people decide, then courts decide. There is a term in political science and jurisprudence called juristocracy. Juristocracy, you know, as opposed to aristocracy, democracy.
Right.
Juristocracy is a term that was coined to imply rule by the courts. That the courts gain powers and the individuals in the court now start to rule the country through the powers of the judiciary, which is a very bad thing because powers belong to the people. So I really found or took issue with that New York Times headline by purporting that now Kenya, we are ruled by the court. Participants in an election in Kenya should understand one thing, that the only way to win an election is to win it on the ballot. Towards the end of that, judgment was very keen on something that had been debated among advocates and even Kenyans, whether the Supreme Court has the powers to declare someone a winner of an election, which was actually one of the prayers in Raila's petition, that is declared a winner for a recount. I remember very well the court said it does not have those powers. Impliedly, it was not clear, but I'll wait for the main judgment. The court said it has only two powers, to nullify or uphold an election, which is a very good thing. We don't expect 7 old men calling themselves learned friends to sit one day and tell us that the president of Kenya is not this one, is that one. That is not proper. Power belongs to the people. The Supreme Court is demarcated only to declare whether the election was free and fair or not free and fair. And it's returned back, bounced back to the people to decide their destiny and who is their leader. So yesterday the Supreme Court did well. That decision again is going to be studied all over the world. Kenya has become a bastion of electoral justice and electoral jurisprudence. Jurisprudence, I mean the decisions of the court.
Right.
So it's a proud moment to be a Kenya that our courts have distinguished themselves all over the world in terms of electoral justice.
Okay. I think let's wrap up with the discussion of yesterday's verdict with this. Looking at Raila Odinga and his political career, here's a question. Of course, I'd like you to look at it from an advocate point of view as well as a political commentator. Immediately after the verdict, the Azimio la Umoja, on behalf of Raila, gave out a statement where he says, we respect the opinion of the court, but vehemently disagree with the decision, as well as his running mate Martha Karua tweeted as well. He said, I respect the decision, but disagree with it. Speaking about, of course, we know the decision by the Apex Court is final. So does that mean that there are no more steps other than to accept that decision for Raila? And then what does this mean for his political career?
One, Raila Odinga, it's quite a moment for him. The most important statement there is respect. That is a statement that we should be very, very proud of. That we've matured democratically, that Supreme Court decisions can be accepted. The rest are gimmicks and theatrics. We don't agree with it. That one does not really matter because the court has pronounced itself. You must agree with it. It's English, that one. But it has serious ramifications on his career. I remember they talked about the fight for justice continues or something of the sort. That one is up to them to decide. But saying you respect simply means that you recognize William Ruto as the president-elect. And I heard Raila's statement and heard President Uhuru's statement. All of them committed, wished them well and committed to a smooth transition. That's the most important thing. What the rest means is that maybe they'll put a fight in Parliament, which is good. You remember on Thursday, Parliament will be having its sitting and they'll be electing a speaker. We expect a very robust Parliament. And it's actually my wish that the speaker position goes to the opposition. That is Azimio. So that the checks and balances can work well. The Parliament before actually failed Kenyans thoroughly on terms of checking the government. It's always good checks and balances. If the government, of course, is controlling executive, it's good to have the Parliament, which is a branch of government, on the opposition, so that the checks and balances can work for Kenyans. On his political future, it is actually a blow. I'll call it, in crude terms, the last nail on his coffin, but not yet. Raila historically has proved to be a very resilient politician. You know, that talk has been there since 1997. Raila is over. It did not work.
Yeah.
2013, Raila amekwisha kabisa. He still came back. Of course, now age is also not on his side, but it can be a modest thing for him to retire and allow a new crop of leaders to come.
Okay.
Age is not on his side. We expect a very robust politician, very vibrant opposition. If he retires, of course, that's his option. It's his derogative. We cannot force him to retire. He can still continue with active politics. But if I were his advisors, I'd have told him, Mzee, you've made a good fight. You've done so much for Kenyans.
Right.
Allow a new crop of opposition leaders to emerge so that we proceed and move the country forward.
All right, I think lastly, I'm being informed here, before we move to transition, let's talk about the full judgment being expected to be out. What does it entail? What is it all about? What should Kenyans look forward to? And of course, will the court give a hearing again, or like rather come read it out, or will just be published?
It is not the first time that this is happening. In 2013, I remember it was the same case. They read a summary to fulfill their constitutional mandate that a judgment should be out within 14 days. It's good they have fulfilled it. Now, what happened in 2013, they published it in the local dailies. I remember it was in the newspaper, of course, the Kenya Law Reports. It's a very important document because that is what contains the reasoning of the court.
Okay.
Not important to the public. The public should be satisfied with the 36 pages.
Yes.
What will come probably in thousands of pages or hundreds of pages is now the thorough reasoning of the court.
Okay.
And that's very important for advocates because that's where now we extract what we call precedent. Precedent is the reasoning of the court that will affect other cases. What might be crucial to the public consumption is the recommendations that will come out of the court.
Okay.
Because they stated that IBC needs to reform and there are some reforms they'll be suggesting. Those reforms are almost binding. I had the chair of IBC say yesterday that he's also looking forward to that so that he can start preparing for future elections. That will be crucial. Another thing that I'm very keen to see how the court will handle was the issue of perjury, that it quite annoyingly stated that we are not impressed by the perjury and forgery that has taken place in this court. Perjury is lying under oath. So I'm keen to see whether the court will recommend prosecution of the people it thinks committed perjury.
All right.
So it is something we look forward to, especially as lawyers, to understand in details what informed what the court read yesterday in terms of extensive legal reasoning.
All right. Let's talk about now, of course, transition matters. We have officially have now a president-elect, William Ruto, deputy president-elect, Rigathi Gachagua, from yesterday's after the court upheld their victory. What next? Of course, we're looking forward to next Tuesday, but what are the steps or processes in between?
Work has begun for them. The way I know the president and deputy president-elect, they are very diligent and calculative politicians. And I think all eyes is on Parliament on Thursday because a president without a majority in Parliament and a speaker under your divide can become very difficult. So they are very keen to win the speakership of both houses, especially the National Assembly, where I believe they have fronted the senator for Bungoma, Wetangula, and the Azimio side has fronted either Kalonzo Musyoka or Marende. There's some confusion. So the fight is now going to Parliament. If Azimio wins the speakership position, then it will not be an easy ride for the president in Parliament because there'll be a very vibrant and strong opposition arising from the speaker and the members. So the fight is heading there. Of course, he'll take over the reins of power after swearing in. That's next Tuesday, which is a national holiday. After that, he's a president. Now it comes to issues of appointment of cabinet, filling the necessary position and running the country. So at this point, also expect there'll be some basic work and some lobbying. You should expect more visits in Karen people going to look for some jobs
Yeah.
as they start now figuring out how they'll organize their, cabinet and their government.
Right. The swearing-in ceremony, of course, is expected to be held from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. as it's constituted. Here's a question: why so? Why 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to be specific?
You remember the events of 2007 when Kibaki was sworn in at night?
Yes.
The framers of the constitution, again in their wisdom, decided that this thing should be done during daytime. And it should be done in a public place as opposed to a private ground like State House where our president, now deceased Kibaki, was sworn in. So it is expected to be a ceremony. They wanted to make it a ceremony, perhaps for purposes of national unity, that at that ceremony then we expect people to reconcile and forge a government forward. So in essence is to ensure that it's a transparent process that is viewed by all Kenyans. Nothing much.
Okay. Of course, the last 5 years we've seen a clear distinction and can I say a botched relationship between the president and his deputy, that is Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. We are waiting to see how that plays out on Tuesday, if President Uhuru Kenyatta will be in attendance, and we'll be looking at that and how that affects everything that will be happening. Right about now, let's listen in to President-elect William Ruto speaking yesterday, his official first address as President-elect.
Be putting a call to my good friend President Uhuru Kenyatta. We have not we have not I haven't talked to him in months. But shortly I will bring a call to him so that we can have a conversation on the process of transition. Be putting a call to my good friend President Uhuru Kenyatta. We have not we have not I haven't talked to him in months. But shortly I will bring a call to him so that we can have a conversation on the process of transition.
All right, President-elect William Ruto right there confessing that he hasn't spoken to President Uhuru Kenyatta for months, saying that he's going to make a call to him. I believe now that it's necessary because of the transition. What do you make of this? Of course, this speaks largely of the relationship that is there between the two. But what are your thoughts?
Despite the drama which we like, I think it's quite an ugly show. Power demands that it should transit smoothly. And, the whole nation is looking at it, at them and how they are handling this process. There are two people who it would be very important that they attend the swearing-in ceremony. Of course, there is no constitutional mandate they do, but it's crucial that they do. That's one, the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and second, the Honorable Raila Odinga. It portrays some level of national unity. There's one thing that people can actually overlook, but it's very important, and that the election in this cycle was won with 230,000 votes. That's a very small margin. And I think that's what our deputy CJ was trying to portray, Philomena Mwilu, yesterday in court. He made a very political statement in his usual clever way by saying 6 people will not be happy today. So half of the country did not vote for this president. It's a reality. It's not that you won overwhelmingly like it were in a year like 2002.
Yes.
Half of the country did not vote for you. You need to come to your senses. You need to unite the country, and people are crucial in that unity. Is definitely Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. So the show is not good for national unity. It's not good for the future. This issue should actually be handled better. We expect that Uhuru Kenyatta will swallow his pride, will be gracious enough to extend an olive branch and attend the swearing-in ceremony, reconcile, we move forward. The political battles and theatrics are done.
Okay, speaking about Uhuru Kenyatta, yesterday there was a video of him speaking, promising, of course, a peaceful transition from his end. I think let's listen in and then we'll come and talk about that.
The Supreme Court made a ruling on the presidential dispute, upholding the results announced by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission on the 15th of August, 2022. And in keeping to the pledge that I made to uphold the rule of law when I took the oath of office, I commit to executing the orders of this court to the letter. The process of handing over is in progress through the Assumption of Office Committee, which actually has already begun its work as of August 10th, 2022. And indeed, it is my intention to oversee a smooth transition to the next administration, and all the necessary orders to facilitate this process have already been issued. And because democracy is a work in progress, I urge the country to respect the institutions that midwife our new leaders. And in doing so, I also urge citizens to constantly put them under scrutiny, for this is the civic duty of every single Kenyan.
Well, I think there are a lot of issues we could talk about from President Kenyatta's speech. One, him asking Kenyans to put under scrutiny institutions, rather, stating that how can an institution decide on a matter differently and this year differently as well. What message is he trying to put across with that statement? Of course, asking Kenyans to scrutinize these institutions. Is he speaking about the Supreme Court? Is he speaking about the verdict yesterday? Or just generally his advice to Kenyans?
Ambiguity is what the president is playing. First and foremost, is good that he has accepted the results of the elections and is actually committed to smooth transition. We should not take it for granted.
Right.
In our region and Africa in general, it is on record presidents who, decide not to hand over power in a smooth way, which can cause a very serious problem to our country, including descending to warfare. So we applaud him for that. That's the most important thing, is the constitutional duty that he has to fulfill. On other issues of congratulating the president or not, those are things he can choose to do or not. We really should not be very concerned about it. Now, I don't know why he decides not to be, or decides to be vague in his address to our nation. First, I noted it's a recorded video. It was not live, which is unlike his usual way of doing things. You expect a president to come live and address the nation. It might be quite humiliating for him. You feel rejection. I've been a candidate in an election and lost, and there is always a feeling of some level of rejection, which, dilutes as you go by. We expect he'll become better and more composed. and tackle the issue and the reality as it is. However, what he's saying is not clear, but I can infer one or two things. What he's simply stating is that Kenyans, as we go forward, remain vigilant.
Okay.
I think he had nothing else to speak after promising a smooth transition,
Right.
and just decided in a vague way to tell Kenyans, say, you guys, as you go forward, remain vigilant in your institutions, ensure that they are strong, and ensure that this government is put to check.
Okay. Of course, you mentioned about the fact that he did not openly congratulate the president-elect, rather choose to say to all leaders who won. Kenyans have read a lot into that. We understand that he openly supported the Azimio's presidential candidate, Raila Odinga, who did not win this election. Speaking about that, and looking at the whole speech yesterday that was released, as he promised a smooth transition, is that what we still expect? Should we expect any theatrics the days to come from that? Or he's just bitter, as you said, and humiliated?
He started the conversation the speech in a very nice way by stating that he took oath. So what it means is that he's only mandated to perform what he took oath to do. And one of them is a smooth transition.
Right.
So we can we can abide or believe his word that is going to fulfill that, which he has no reason not to. And that's the most important thing, that power transfers from this regime to another. The issue of congratulations and what, is still a political player.
Yes.
There's a presumption that Uhuru has retired from politics. It is not that. We can still participate in active politics. He's a patron of Azimio. He can form part of the opposition. He can actually become an opposition leader, at least outside the parliament, and run that function.
Indeed.
So some political undertones are still playing, which is not a bad thing. What we want is a smooth transition. From there, political gimmicks and theatrics can continue. One thing also noted, he did not commit to attending the swearing-in ceremony. So as we speak, he has left us in wondering whether he'll be available or not, he'll be present or not, which is not a good picture, because if you read the law, it talks about the former president handing a constitution and a sword to the incoming president. It's not a constitutional mandate that he should be there, but it's good for the country if he's there. Because even in 2002, when Moi was humiliated far more than Uhuru is humiliated now, he still had the guts. I remember even people were throwing mud. I was quite young, but I remember very well the scenario at Uhuru Park. He still had the composure to attend that ceremony.
Right.
I believe Uhuru, as a statesman, should do the same, attend the swearing-in ceremony, hand over powers to President Ruto, at least ceremoniously, in his presence. Then he can get back to the political gallery and still play his politics, if he so wishes.
He should brace himself, attend the
ceremony.
Sure.
It's very important. It's a good picture that you point. There are dignitaries there. You are president. You know, until he's sworn in, you are still the president.
Yes, indeed.
Attend that ceremony and create a perception of national unity.
Okay. In a likely chance he doesn't attend, of course, then nothing stops, everything continues.
Sure. I even had a politician stating that he'll bring a kitchen knife from his kitchen in the morning to represent the sword and hand it over to the president. It's not mandatory that he's there, but it will create some hiccups in terms of procedure and protocol if he's not around. It will not be the best of ceremonies, because now who is handing over to who?
Yes.
It creates some hiccups that create a very bad perception and can actually upset the ceremony in terms of logistics and smooth running.
Okay. And of course, you mentioned that some hiccups will be there if he does not attend. Speaking of handing over the tools of power, if he's not present, then who does that?
Interesting. Again, it's a ceremonious issue, so they might not be handed over as well. He still become a president after taking oath.
Yeah.
But, now it's an upset to the law. It is an unprecedented thing. Actually, when the Constitution and our laws were being made, it was assumed that the president would be fair and gracious enough to attend such a ceremony. It's practiced all over the world. But you remember the swearing in of Joe Biden, the current president of the United States?
Right.
actually Trump did not attend it.
Yes.
It still went on. The person who must attend, of course, is the Chief Justice for purposes of swearing in. If he doesn't attend, then it becomes a big problem.
Right.
It can actually bring legal issues as to the validity of the swearing in ceremony. If he doesn't, we don't know. Probably whoever will be there can decide to hand over the Constitution and the kitchen knife to President-elect William Ruto.
Yes.
But you can see the embarrassment and the, the tense environment that would create in such a ceremony of national importance.
All right, but I think for me, like what you said earlier on about it will be a good thing if President Uhuru Kenyatta attends, as well as Honorable Raila Odinga, of course.
Definitely.
A show of unity.
Sure.
And I believe it's something that, of course, will be used as well for future references, because you never know what happens next.
Exactly.
Who William Ruto will be handing over to when his time comes, whether 5 years or 10 years, who knows. So I believe it will also be something to look back to. And I think I agree with that, for the purpose of Kenya and peace and unity in the country. I think that's all we had for today. But of course, before I wrap it up, what will be your final remarks?
My final remarks goes to Kenya, and they are congratulatory in nature that we are past an election cycle. We have now a president-elect who has been affirmed by a Supreme Court. Let's unite. Let's build the country. As the common saying goes, at the end of the day, no president will bring you a plate of food in your living room. Let's work, let's build the country. For those who are aligned towards Azimio, it's a chance to give the president opportunity to serve.
Right.
And opportunity to serve for the president means criticism as well as support. So we expect the brilliant minds on the side of Azimio to regroup and form a vibrant opposition that will put the government in check. For the side of the president, whoever will get jobs to serve Kenyans, do them with dignity, honor, and without corruption, so that we move on as a nation, we build our country, and we prosper.
Right. Okay.
That's all.
Thank you so much, Levi Munyeri, for today, for coming. Indeed, I do agree with what you've just talked about, and thank you for setting time and being part of this very important discussion. Levi Munyeri, right there, an advocate as well as a political commentator. Thank you to you as well for tuning in and interacting with us. It has been a wonderful program. Many thanks. My name is Faith Kaulu. I wrap it up right here for now. It is a goodbye from me to you. Do have a good day and enjoy the rest of our programming. Goodbye.